Every day, 40 million Americans fill up their cars with fuel. How did they get there? And what's on their minds? We're going to talk about a recent consumer survey that's now in NACS magazine. We'll give you some of those answers. Joining us today to have this conversation is a regular podcast contributor, Adam Rosenblatt. He's with Bold Decision and regularly does consumer polling for us. So thanks for joining us once again today, Adam.
Great to be on. Happy to discuss what we're seeing in America.
So I set this up and I mentioned it's in the latest NACS magazine. It's in the September issue, and it is one of the bigger issues that we have this year. It's the pre-NACS show issue. So if it hasn't hit your desk yet, it will shortly. It's also online, and a lot of interesting feature stories in there. But I thought this one might resonate more than others, just basically on the timeliness. We're coming out of Labor Day, recorded right before Labor Day. And so what's going on in people's minds? Summer drive is over, but how people think about fueling is certainly not over. And before we get into some of the things that we learned about what people are doing at the pump, and by the way, this is the first of a 3-part series that we have, that it will be in NACS magazine. September issue, October issue. Did I do that? November comes after October, right? Still? So anyway, those will be the 3 issues, and we'll cover different things in each issue. This one, we're focusing on the pump. But Adam, let's just start out, before we dive into numbers and like the 3 big takeaways that we found. What you've done consumer polling for years. You've done it with NACS for years, kind of set up for people. I think too often I kind of race into, here's the results. Let's take a step back just to start out by, how important is it to find out what consumers are thinking? And then also, how important is it to find out the right way? You don't want to say like how questions are structured, and how do you get the outcome that is the correct outcome, not the outcome you want to get, but the correct outcome.
Yeah. So there's, in the realm of polling, sometimes we say there's 2 different types of polls. There's poll to know and poll to show, right? Do we want to learn something, or do we think we already know the answer and we want to tell everybody? The stuff that we do here is a little bit of both. We want to learn new things. We want to understand what's going on, but we also want to tell everybody what we're learning. And what I like with what we do here and what we're going to share, not just in this article, but in the other months to come, we're looking backwards, right? We're asking people what they did do in the past, because that's often indicative of what they'll do in the future. But we also ask them about future activities. We actually ask them about things that might not exist right now. And what's really cool when we have this type of stuff in polling, we can do comparisons, of course. We can say, here's how this number compared to last month or to last year or 5 years or 10 years ago. But then we can also look back on questions that were ideas that barely existed when we look back 10 years ago. When we talk about things like self-driving cars, nowadays it's not that uncommon if you're in a major city to see self-driving cars or some sort of autonomy. But if we went back 10 years ago and asked people about that, that would be the equivalent of talking about, the new housing that opened up on the moon. And people would say, what are you talking about? That's just completely not believable. So it's fun because a lot of what we talk about, as you said, is the price at the pump, is what they're doing, their daily interactions inside the store and all those types of things. But we're also sometimes banging around on some things that are emerging. Maybe they'll emerge, maybe they won't. And the people who listen to this, I think they end up smarter. I know I'm smarter from doing this stuff, because if you figure out what's working and you really go after what's working and you see what doesn't work, you can operate better, right? Somebody's going to have a little bit of a competitive advantage potentially, based off knowing what the consumers want. You're not going to want to be the guy who's selling the thing that nobody's interested in.
So just to clarify, there is no housing on the moon, correct?
No. I've asked polling on it, but not right now.
It doesn't pull very high, I guess is the way. Just a quick aside, I remember years ago hearing about how Nielsen, which back in the day, they do TV ratings and what people are watching. And apparently 1% of people, when they filled out the survey the week that man landed on the moon, said that they were watching something else. And we were a Nielsen family at one point. So when we asked one of the people that was doing that, and we said, what was why did 1% say they were doing something else when there's this amazingly historic thing going on? And he said, there might be people that had no interest in something, and then might just been people that are just saying, I'm just going to be difficult this week. But so that's another thing that we always weigh when we look at things like that. And what you were talking about, it's trends as much as anything. Yeah. Because there are things that people say, and it's like, well, did they say it because they want you to think they're smart? But when you look at it year after year after year, you see these trends and you see things emerge that say, this is important.
One of my favorite things, that we think about when we do this type of polling is, sure, there's the average customer, and right, there's the people who operate the stores, right, who think about who's our average customer or what does he or she come in and do. But what the polling constantly, shows us over and over is there really isn't an average customer, right? There might be the most common and the most typical one, but there's a whole chunk of people who shop in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day or at breakfast time or in the afternoon, or who drive a different type of car. So even though you might develop a plan trying to say, how can I develop a strategy that'll help me get 50% of the people or 70 or 80% of the people, in reality, it's very, very diverse on everything, right? Most people on average pay with debit, right? But there's still a lot of people who pay with credit, and there's still some people who pay with cash. So all of those things are true, and it's cool to actually see that. And again, they change from time to time, but we really are a very, very big, diverse country. And it's not entirely driven by geography on what these factors are.
We won't talk about it today. We'll talk about it in one of the future ones, but we also did some survey asking people, do they behave differently as the week goes on? So that's a little teaser, when the answer is 1 in 5 people do. So that's something we'll be talking about more. But let's kind of go through the 3 big things that came out of this. And this is a look at what people are thinking and doing at the pump. The next time in the survey in the magazine, and probably when we do a podcast, is going to be about what they're doing inside the store. And then the third component is, what are they thinking about the industry? Not what are they thinking about themselves, but what are they thinking about the industry? So we'll start with this one. This is going to be about what's on their minds and what are they doing about fueling. And first off, no surprise, gas prices are always on people's minds. Gas prices are roughly the same as they were a year ago. Right now, they're sitting at $3.18, something like that. So, but we are number one of our findings is we're finding that's affecting people's daily existence because of higher prices that we've seen over the last few years. The gas price itself is making people behave a little differently, both at the pump and elsewhere.
Yeah, we've seen all year a lot of economic unease from people. It's, we attributed it at first to the election, but we're almost a year past the election at this point. But there's a lot of unease, and people are changing their behaviors, right? When, I've said it for years, that it's not just that the dollar menu is gone, it's not coming back, right? People are trying to figure out how to stretch that dollar. So one of the ways that they're doing that they can, if they can, is sometimes at the gas pump. Or even before the gas pump, it's the decision to get in the car, right? The decision to drive. People still need to work, and people still need to get to places. But we actually found that a lot of people, actually 46%, say that they're driving less than they were last year. So that's a big change for the roads. And then, of course, that's going to have a ripple effect straight to the stores.
and whether it's at the pump or whether it's inside the store, because if people are sticking around more at their home, they're not going to any retail unless it's online or delivery where somebody's bringing it to them. And we also asked, why would you be driving more? Why would you be driving less? You look at EAI numbers, which is government numbers, looking at demand, and the peak year for fueling was 2017, 9.3 million barrels per day. We're in terms of gasoline volume, we're down to 8.99 or 9 million barrels per day. So it's down, and it's probably not going to come back because of fuel efficiency and all that. But there's also, as we were looking to measure, people are driving less for a variety of reasons. There are some reasons that people are driving more, and there are some reasons people are driving less. Do you want to kind of highlight some of the findings that you found out?
Totally. The one that's not a surprise at all, of course, would be the price of gas. Even if we say the price of gas held stable, it's always too high, right? To anybody. And I'm not saying that for us as the industry. I'm saying with a consumer hat, everybody always wants something on sale. Everybody always wants something cheaper. Everybody wants something discounted. So it's not shocked that we see 68%, so 2 and 3, who say they're driving less because of the price of gas. Almost a third of people, 38% actually, say they're having fewer social activities outside their home. So less reason to go around. A quarter, 26%, say fewer errands, right? So there's just finding ways that people are kind of cutting back. The thing that's not necessarily driving it is that they're all flocking to take the bus or take the train. Again, that's not an option for a lot of folks. That's only 11% who say it's because they're using more, public transportation more. They're finding ways to cut back. Again, obviously, we focus heavily on the C-store industry, but people are cutting back in all different areas, groceries, eating out, all over. And I think we're just seeing an echo of that in our sector too. It's not, the good or bad is that it's not necessarily worse for us than the impact is for other people as well. Everybody's dealing with this in all sectors.
And when we look at these surveys, one of the things is we focus on how this is important to convenience retail. There's certainly things I'm curious about. I want to know about the fewer social activities outside the home. 38% said they are doing fewer social activities outside the home. My big question is why? We didn't get the answer in this, nor do we need to. But is it a post-COVID kind of effect? Is it something related to the economy? Is it related to something else? Polarization of the country? We don't know, but we do know that people are saying they're doing fewer social activities, and that does affect how people may interact in daily life and how much fuel they may buy. So that's why we looked at that. But there probably are some presumptions we could make about that.
Some of it, I think it's interrelated to the economics. Going out to the movies is not, I bought a $5 movie ticket. If you go to see a modern movie, a new Marvel movie in IMAX in 3D, you could be spending $30 or more on a ticket before you go and spend, $30 on popcorn and $30 on a drink. For each one of these people, you could just, family of 4, wow. Years ago, you could have maybe taken a trip somewhere for that same amount of money. I'm being a little facetious, but that type of stuff goes into people's calculations versus, hey, I already paid for Netflix. I already paid for Hulu. Let me just sit back and do this. So it's become, and we'll get to this in later podcasts, it's become more convenient to people to have the options to stay at home. You brought up delivery, right? There's a lot more flexibility that people have of not needing to go out to the stores to buy things, to get things delivered. I mean, we've seen that happen. Amazon's changed that. And again, back to the prior comment of, things on the moon. Nobody would have ever believed us if we said 5 years ago that we could legitimately ask, hey, would you be interested in having a drone deliver something to your house or a robot roll down the street and deliver stuff? That's not that far away. That actually exists in some places now. So it's one of these things that we can look at and see, is that something that people want? And again, I think they really want convenience more than anything else is what they flock towards.
Yeah, and we've had a previous conversation on a podcast, and we found out the big word was easy. Now, quick diversion. I wanted to get an electronic thing, so I went to a electronics company that actually has something called the Easy Button. I won't mention which one. And I went there, and that easy promise didn't really play out because where I wanted to buy something, you look at the pegboard where they had all the products. I would say fully half of the options were gone. They're out of inventory, and they'd assigned, sorry, come back another time. Not easy. I don't know if I'll ever go back there, and there are other easier options. So when we talk about what people are looking for, they're looking for solutions now and not excuses that say, well, gee, sorry, we'll try again. Things are really difficult now. Things are difficult to everybody. And that kind of feeds into the second thing is people have favorite places to go. And there are a variety of reasons why 59% of the U.S. customers say they have a particular place that they like to go. No surprise. It's known for lower prices. We didn't ask, do they have the lowest prices, but they're known for lower prices. But that's one of the factors in why somebody is picking a place to fuel.
Yeah, the two, and they're statistically tied. It's that, a place usually has lower prices, as you said. It's not guaranteed, but it usually does. And the store's location, that matters equally, because again, time is money, right? So those two run together, and those are a tranche ahead of some of the other factors like fuel quality. That matters, right? People will have an attitude and a perspective towards that. Loyalty programs, that'll help too. That's useful. The quality of the prepared food and the quality of the store employees, that matters as well, but to a lesser degree. And then, the other one, there's a lot of other ones, but the one that I'll highlight, because we spent a lot of time talking about this in the past, is restrooms and cleanliness. That's not the dominating thing of why they pick, because, again, that's usually they're not seeking out the bathroom most of the time. They're actually going to a store to buy something. But it's a barrier to entry thing. Well, we've talked about this in the past, and we've done research on this for years. It's sort of like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? There's basic needs that need to be met. If, even the president, I think, literally said this a week or two ago of the old adage that, if a restaurant's not clean in the front, it's probably not clean in the back, right? There's that perspective that people still have. If they're giving you the key to the bathroom and it's attached to a hubcap, you're probably not going to want to go in and eat inside and say, let me see what prepared foods and fresh food options they have. We've done a great job, and not just NACS, I mean, really the retailers and anybody who's listening to this has done a great job changing that image, and actually not just the image, but making those types of changes in recent years, so that doesn't need to be the determining factor. And honestly, it's barely a factor nowadays. But again, it's a great example of how the research actually helps change stuff, because, we could have just ignored that and said, hey, that's not that important. It's low on the list. But if you botch that, I strongly recommend to any retailer listening to this, don't botch that. Don't botch the cleanliness of your stores, because people won't come back. They might come in once, but they're not going to come back.
Yeah, and we talk about that. I liked how you phrased it about the hierarchy of needs. And then we also, when we survey, we have subcategories or breakdowns where we look at people by age, by where they live, whether it's region or whether it's urban or rural settings. And sometimes they're very similar, but there's one thing I want to point out on that before we get to point 3, and that is we also look at frequency of customer. And we have somebody that we have identified as frequent customer. These are people that come in multiple times per week, and their behavior is much different than the average American. They are much more likely to value the quality of the food, the quality of the fuel, and the quality of employees. Those are much, much more important to them. In addition to what's important to everybody that you said, the hierarchy of needs with cleanliness and all the things that are just basic things that everybody's looking for. So want to also transition to point number 3 that we talked about as number 2 is here's what people think are important. Now, number 3, what we looked at is number 2 is what they think is important. Number 3 is how might we change their behavior? How might we change what they're doing yesterday, today, to how we can do something different tomorrow? And the classic question we always ask is, what would you do to go 5 minutes out of your way compared to save 5 cents a gallon? We started this years ago. We asked, what would you do to save 5 cents a gallon? It included a bunch of things. And then we started asking the question a little differently, adding 5 cents a gallon or go to the store you like more. And we found that people are more likely to go out of their way to go to the store they like more than save 5 cents a gallon. And that kind of feeds in to point number 2 about the hierarchy of needs. They want to go to these places, but there's also ways to incent them to go there beyond the driving out of their way to the store they want to go more.
Yeah, we've seen fuel efficiency obviously get better in recent years, but I don't think that's really the explanation, of why people don't care about a nickel as much anymore on this type of thing. It's that loyalty aspect. Again, a lot of the stores, a lot of the bigger stores, even the smaller stores will have good loyalty programs, but it's not just, I have an app, I have a card. It's the actual real loyalty that the store employee shows to the customer. Right? When they know their name. I've said it many times on here before. There's a lot of people who come in when we're such a big country. A lot of people who go into the store. That might be the first person who they talk to in the day, or it might be the last person who they talk to in the day. It might be the only person who they talk to that day. So it sounds sad that yes, they're going in for food or drink or beverage or gas or going to the bathroom. But honestly, secretly, maybe they're going in for social interaction. And in a country of millions, there's hundreds of thousands of people, maybe 1 million people or more, who are seeking that out, just human connection every single day. And it's that. It's not just coming in because, maybe I can win the Powerball. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And it's little things like that sometimes actually matter more than the money. And putting in that effort. And again, I know it's tougher to do, but making sure that all the employees realize that is exciting because they're doing something bigger than just, handing somebody a receipt or paying for a transaction.
Yeah. And when you talk about value and valued, one thing I mentioned all the subgroups, and one thing that we did see is people in the South, that region, are much more likely to look for discounts on food and beverages than the rest of the country. It's least appraised or least prized in the West. There's many, many more findings. It's a 6-page article. We dive into a lot of information there. So look in the September issue of NACS magazine. We are going to have more information beyond that in the October issue, at the NACS show issue. Hopefully see you at the NACS show, and then also in the November issue. We will be talking more about this, Adam. Thank you for setting up these findings in a 3-part series. And we look forward to educating everybody out there a little bit more about some of the trends going on in the industry and what they can do about them. So thanks for joining us once again today.
Thanks.
And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.